Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Why do I have my hood on? Today we're doing another good, bad, and ugly, this time on the BMW E36, because last time we did it on the E46, and some people said they wanted to see the E36, and so we're doing the E36. First of all, I just want to say, I love this car, alright? This car's amazing. Also, if you guys are interested in some SmoothStance hats, shirts, and shorts, they're coming next week. Just be on the lookout. I'm super excited, I cannot wait! But anyway, let's get right into it. 325i, the 328i, and the M3, with the M3 or the 328i being the most popular options since they performed the best. And for the sake of this video's length and just my personal sanity, we're only going to be going over the M3, the 328i, and the 325i, which, by the way, the 325i comes with a 2.5 liter inline six that makes 189 horsepower and 181 foot-pounds of torque. The 328i came with a 2.8 liter inline six that makes 190 horsepower and 207 foot-pounds of torque, so a big jump in torque, but not that big of a jump in horsepower. And finally, the M3 came with actually two different engines, the 3 liter inline six and a 3.2 liter inline six, and they both made 240 horsepower and 236 foot-pounds of torque. They were also available in rear-wheel drive, with some all-wheel drive models being available, but not lots since they were kind of still new to that. Alright, so now let's get into modifying this car. And first off, people love drifting these things and keeping the body, for the most part, stock and not going too crazy with body kits and all that, at least in the show scene. For the show scene, they look really good bone stock. And when purists, you know what a purist is, right? The people that they buy it, they get a car, they just want to keep it how it was built, they like that the best. When the purists get their hands on these cars, they like to keep them that way, which actually makes me super happy, because these cars were crafted by the hands of God himself, and putting aftermarket body kits on it can, if not done right, make it look just so much worse. Yes, there are a lot of good looking body kits for the E36. The Rocket Bunny body kit is pretty damn nice. They have that Drifty Boy body kit that looks really nice too. And then they have the M3 styling of body kit too that looks really good for the base model 3 series, obviously. But they do really good, they have really nice body kits, but a lot of the time people buy a body kit and they don't have the money to afford somebody else installing it for them, and so they do it themselves, and then it comes out and looks terrible. And if that's your case, just keep it stock, because the E36 body stock looks great. It is really well put together. Obviously, in drifting though, they don't really care about how well the car looks, so they just slap whatever body kit on there to make it look a little bit nicer, and I can appreciate that as well. On top of that, when you're drifting, you want a body kit that can get destroyed and can get just ripped off, because you're going to be going into the grass a little bit and it's going to get your bumpers ripped off. You want a bumper that's easy to detach and something that will hold up and not take a lot of damage, and so they buy these really cheap body kits that don't really care if they get destroyed. For track days, this thing is, at least in the M3 version, was and still is an absolute beast. I've said it before and I will say it again. BMW is one of the most well-rounded brands when it comes to track days, and the E36 was no exception. They are great at track days. If you go to a track day, you will see hundreds of BMWs there. Why? Because they're good at it. These cars are built to handle around a track really well, and I just absolutely love that about it. The E36 M3 is a perfect example of that. They were an amazing track car when they first came out. The only really thing that I can think of that the E36 struggles with is drag racing / street car builds, but they are an old car and they weren't built for that anyway. They're a BMW. BMWs can be really great street cars. I think actually BMW is one of the best street cars out there, but the E36s, the older ones, were not built for that. Now it's time to get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the way this works is, first off, I go over the good, which are things that are just handy dandy, loving and smiling and douching and lushing about the car. The bad, which are things that are take it or leave it. If you like it, that's good. If you don't like it, that sucks. And finally, the ugly, which are things that you just can't admit are bad about the car. And right off the bat, for the good, I want to say, for the base model ones, the price is really worth it. They don't cost as much as you would think, but they are definitely on the rise. E36s are rising in price, but you can find an E36 right now relatively clean for $4 grand, and that's pretty worth it. I mean, I said before that it's not, but it kind of is. If it depends, I mean, obviously it depends on what E36 you're going to buy, but for the most part, they're going to be worth it, and I think they're a really good bargain for your price that you're going to pay on it. Next is, despite what people say, they are extremely reliable cars to drive around every day. It's just the thing with these old BMWs is that if you pick one up that's been abused its whole life, then yes, it's going to be a terrible daily. They're not meant to be, you know, destroyed. No car is. No car is meant to just be beaten on and no oil changes and never change any fluids. That's not what they're meant to do. And so yeah, if you buy a car that has just been abused and misused its whole life, it's going to be a terrible, an unbelievably unreliable car. But I had a friend who had an E36 one time, and it lasted him up to 270,000 miles until he sold it, and it's still going to this day. So they are reliable cars. Next is, the aftermarket scene is massive, and everything for them is relatively cheap, except for tunes, because BMW is just so complicated, and their tunes cost an arm and a leg to freaking tune your car. It really makes me mad. I don't like that, but it's whatever. You gotta understand, it's a German engineering. It's not easy to tune that, and so it's going to cost a little bit. Next is, the looks of these cars are as old as time. I mean, these old BMWs, they always look super duper good, and I have literally never in my life heard anybody say that they don't like the looks of older BMWs, especially when well taken care of. Literally anybody out there can appreciate them, and like, if you can't, I don't know what's wrong with you, man. Like, they're nice cars. There's nothing at all that I would complain about with the E36. It looks really, really good if clean. There's a lot of shot ones out there that, yeah, those ones don't look clean, but for the most part, they look really good. And finally, for the good, is the community for BMWs is massive, but they can be a little bit toxic, to be honest, so just be careful about that and make sure you find the right guys. And any questions you have, they'll be happy to answer, and you'll be really, really happy that you got yourself involved in the BMW community. Now it's time for the bad, and right off the bat is the exhaust note isn't bad, but it isn't something to write home about either. That's a personal opinion. I'll let you decide. Here's a clip. Next is, they have very, very cheap plastics on the interior, but that's a given. They are an older car. You have to expect some things to be cheap since you're paying $3,000 for an already used drift car. These cars are going to be cracked interior. It's going to happen. Any 90s car is going to that's going to happen, unless you're buying like a Ferrari F40. Okay, everything else though, I don't even think the F40 was made in the 90s, but you know what I meant. If you're buying like a nice high-class Ferrari, yeah, it'll be maintained, but a base model E36, the people that drive those do not care about the plastics inside there. They're going to be cracked, going to be cheap. It's a 90s car. You gotta think about that. On top of that, the leather interiors on these cars also have been worn out by now and are going to need to be replaced, unless you like sitting on like 4 previous owners worth of farts and sweat, but that's completely up to you. And finally, for the bad, not too much for the bad today, it is the speed out of the box for one of these cars is very small. I mean, yes, the car is old, and back then BMW made a very fast car, but up to today's standards, it isn't. But that's okay. I'm not bashing BMW at all, because obviously BMW is still making very fast cars. Their M3s now are mind-bogglingly quick, and so I'm not saying that they're not good at what they do, because back when these cars were made, they were amazingly fast, okay? Like, they're really good. But with that being said, it isn't to say that you're not going to have fun in one of these cars. I think these are one of the most fun cars that you can buy, just because they're so cheap. They love to get sideways, and they got a little pep in their step. Now it's time for the ugly, and first off is the combination of everything else that will just be going bad due to the car's old age. I'm talking about paint fading, headlights dimming, seals going, and wheels having bad brake dust. Stuff like that is fixable though, and it just needs some love and money, but it's something that you're definitely going to want to look into if you're thinking about buying one of these, because these cars have been abused. I've said it like 500 times now, but it's the truth. When this 3 Series first came out, nobody took care of these cars. They were commuter cars, and nobody thought they would be worth the amount of money that they are now and how much people would actually want them right now. And so every one of them, especially the ones that me and you can afford, are going to be a little bit shot, and I just had to put that in the ugly. Usually I don't do that, but these ones, it's a little bit of an exception, just because like everybody knows that once a BMW goes down that bad path of being like misused, it's very hard to bring it back. Next is BMW's cooling system issues. A lot of people seem to deal with this, and the E36 is no stranger to that. The radiator leaks like crazy, the power steering pump goes really bad, really easily, and that'll eventually cause your car to overheat, meaning that you want to check that when going to pick one up. Make sure that they did the work to that, or if they didn't do the work to that, just make sure that it's still okay and it's not leaking, because you don't want a blown up E36 10 minutes after you're driving away from just giving the guy $3,000. And finally, for the ugly, is burning oil. This happens in a lot of cars, so it's not that big of a deal, but in the E36 it happens significantly worse, which is why people always joke about BMWs and their oil consumption problems. Like, there's a bunch of TikToks about it, like, oh, you're texting her on Snapchat, my BMW is sitting outside leaving oil stains in her driveway. They have bad problems with oil, okay? It's gonna happen. It's an easy fix. It's a fix that can happen, but it's just unfortunate that it has to happen. So, does Mark Roden think that you should get one? Well, to be honest with you, it depends on which one you're going to get. These cars are extremely fun cars for just about anybody if you can find one that's been well taken care of. But if you find one that has sat for many years or been used as a beater daily, then you will probably be better off buying something a little bit newer or cheaper, or just something that's better all around. Like, for example, an E46, since they're less old and they've been around the block less. Either way, though, they are extremely fun cars, especially if you want a drift car, okay? If you want a drift car, buy one. They're great drift cars. Do I think you should still look into them if you're thinking about drifting? I mean, not drifting. If you're thinking about, like, a show car, yeah. But with a show car, you have to understand that it's going to be expensive. You can't buy a $3,000 E36 and build it into a... I mean, you can, and that'd be really cool, and you get like 1 million views on YouTube if you did that. But it's a lot easier to just buy a nice E36 and build it up into a show car. So if you're looking to do a show car build, I would still recommend looking into a nicer E36. For drag racing or a street build, though, I hate to say it, but I would stay away from these cars since they are a little bit on the slow side nowadays, up to today's standards. You're almost pretty much going to have to swap the engine out unless you get the M3. Everything else, though, it's going to be a little bit tough to build enough power to hang out with the competition that's on the road. If you're looking for a street build and you only have $3 grand, I would recommend just picking up a Civic. But that is the end of this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, you already know what to do, my mans. My man, you already know what to do, man. Like, comment, and subscribe for more. Also, guys, if any of you guys out there owns an E36 and I got something wrong in here, please let me know down in the comments below and I will pin your comment or give it that heart. I mean, I guess it's the same thing as pinning it, but also I don't want to be misinforming people that are actually looking to buy an E36. So if I got something wrong, let them know so that they're not misinformed. I would not like that. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, SmoothStance hats, shirts, and shorts are coming next week. I'm going to find out an exact date, probably tomorrow or Sunday, and I'll give you an exact date then. Let me know another card to do, and Das Vidania, have a nice night.